or work together. The bathroom. Well, here's the thing. Uh, incredibly important because that person would work, but if you don't, you want to use it on safety. And building, incredibly important work. So what happens?
Take down the microphone towards the stage.
Right, well, perfect. I will. All right, I think it's about time for. All right, great to see you. Okay. Did you mean pass the mic back and forth? All right.
Hello? If everyone could start finding a seat, we'll be getting started shortly. So if you're standing, talking, mingling, feel free to grab a seat and we'll get started in the next few minutes.
Hey, Keith, how's it going? Hanging in?
I am.
I do. I feel, but, you can stay on your feet for another 17 days, and then, either get to take a long nap, or you don't get 4 to 8 years. You're trying to find us. Yeah, I was getting ready. I get this. Oh my God. Got a problem. Get managed to give some passion yesterday. So he was playing soccer with his brother and very exactly like early ground kick the ball this and he used to put himself on his back and whack his head. And I said, oh my gosh, they are big odds. Oh, yeah, yeah. Okay. Well, I assume you're not. I know you're not. So what a good word for people to do, although it's good for people to turn on their brain. Currently I have some very good and like yeah, so they memories so last week or so. So right. That's currently the present letter member permitting staff. Right now, I think that's it. Yeah. Yeah. No, no, a lot of this is this for 5 or 6 of it here. It's nice for me to actually where's the what is right first. Yeah, it's great. In the press, I did it to the top national press, and they're essentially my neighborhood, what the best neighborhood. Yeah, there you go. Yeah. All part of my secret click. Yeah. There's local restaurants there. Oh, I know. It was so made from whoever wrote it. The neighborhood is very popular. And like age. They talked about it. Yeah, that was, I'm sorry. But it is like sure that determining. Yeah, no, I feel very, we go to the right. Fruits bag is a term and right, except for the good part. I shoot. Yeah. Brings a part for you to.
I agree. He has a lot of in his head.
Oh, is he here?
Yeah, he's there.
It's not a word. Good water. How much of a trigger fight?
Right, you.
I'm getting better.
As I grow older, I have to, right? That's the part.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, thank you, Chris.
Oh, before you go.
Hello, welcome to 350 PDX's Climate Justice Mayoral Forum. My name is Denise Lopez. I'm the organizing and outreach manager here at 350. And all the other 350 PDX staff and board could raise their hand. A few housekeeping items before we get started. First, if anyone's thirsty, there's water. There's a water filler and cups in between these two black tables over there. So if you're thirsty, you need water, head on over. The other housekeeping thing is Katie in the back has this very cute black cat basket. If anyone has any questions that they've written that they want to ask our mayoral candidates, that's the place to put them. I think Katie will do a lap around, so if you have a question and you haven't put it in the basket, that was the time. Big thank you to the Melody for being a generous co-sponsor of this event. We couldn't have done this without their generosity. Big thank you to Sunrise PDX and Making Earth Cool. If you haven't checked out their Instagram or any of their newsletters this election season, you're kind of snoozing. There's big events and really cool information on their websites. If you've joined along for the journey, we've had so many events this season, and it's really exciting to be able to kind of end with a bang, one last hurrah with this Mayoral Forum. We've had the climate justice tours. Did anyone attend one of those? Yeah, okay, a couple people. We had our candidate forums. Did anyone attend one of those? All right, and yeah, now we're ending with a bang. Last things before I introduce Katya is we have one last event this Wednesday. It's our action night, our monthly action night, where we're unveiling our climate justice voter guide that Charisse and her team have been working really hard on. And also we'll have more presentations on ranked choice voting and a chance to fill out your ballot in a very cozy environment. Oh, I also want to ask, who's coming from each district? District 1, are there any district people? Yeah, all right. District 2. District 3. District 3 is my favorite. And District 4. Which reminds me, like, let's bring some life into this venue. So When you're hearing candidates answering questions, feel free to clap, holler, scream, whatever you need to convey your emotions. Okay, so now to introduce Katya. Katya owns and operates a queer, femme, and BIPOC-centric company called Click Clock Productions, which provides event, media, and resourcing services for the Portland and LGBTQ+ communities at large. We're super fortunate to have them with us here tonight, and I'll pass it off to you.
Hello, how are y'all doing? We look fabulous. Thank you for being here, each and every single one of you. My name is Katya, and we are at the Mayoral Town Hall for Climate Justice. Y'all ready to hear some information? Yeah. Learn about these candidates. And then, of course, make some more noise for 350 PDX for putting this on. A lot of sunrise, making it cool. Could not be confident. All right, we're going to introduce our candidates to get us started. We have first, alphabetically, we have Mingus Mapps, former professor and current commissioner who oversaw transportation, water, and environmental services. Liv Osthus, local author, musician, and artist. Carmen Rubio, former Latino Network Executive Director and current commissioner who oversees housing, developmental services, planning, and sustainability, along with Prosper Portland. And last but not least, we have Keith Wilson, local businessman and founder of nonprofit Shelter Now. I want to make mention to that Renee Gonzalez was invited tonight and unfortunately is unable to attend. I won't say anything more on that. All right, so some rules to go through just before we get started. Of course, please silence those cell phones. We don't want any interruptions. That's for me too, making sure. Alrighty, they have received the questions beforehand. You will each have about 1 minute to 2 minutes to answer. I want to make some noise and thank you to Charisse, our timekeeper. And we ask that all the candidates please honor and respect those time limits. You will have one opportunity tonight for a 30-second follow-up or rebuttal, so choose wisely. And audience submitted questions will be permitted at the end as long as we stay track and on time. All right, I want to first start us with some intentions before we get into it. We often forget that we are nature, and nature is not something separate from us. So when we say we have lost our connection to nature, we have lost our connection to ourselves. Andy Goldsworth. I, like many Portlanders, am so grateful for the connection of our city to so much verdant and vast natural beauty. And our love of nature is not tied just to the physical world, but also to sustainability practices and climate justice. Today, we will be hearing from each of these candidates on the intersection of climate justice and governance, economics, transportation, regulation, and county and city relations. I personally am looking forward to an attentive audience, an informative climate-centered discussion, and getting to know each of these candidates even better. And with that, let us begin. Run out of time. Our first topic is on the role of the mayor. This mayoral election will be like any other, changing after 111 years with 19 candidates vying to be ranked within Portland citizens' top 6 choices. And the role of mayor is changing significantly under new city charter structure. The new mayor will introduce policy, but no longer hold a council seat, only voting to break a tie. They will still be hiring a city administrator, among other important city roles, executing public policy and representing the city of Portland on official affairs. Our first question for Ms. Rubio, drawn at random, and we'll go down and back and so forth and so on. How would you describe the mayor in the new structure, and what would be your personal approach to the mayoral role?
Thank you. And first, I want to say thank you for 360 PDX for having us all here today. It's really great to be here with people who are aligned around our values. For me, when I think about the new mayoral role, I think about the fact that Portlanders overwhelmingly voted for this change, and that means they want a new way of doing business in our city. And that means that we're at a pivotal moment. We have a once-in-a-generation opportunity to really change the blueprints of the city culture and how the mayor and the city council engage with one another. So as the mayor, I see the role that will no longer be on council as being the chief communicator for the city, to speak with one voice, to use that bully pulpit as a champion for the city, also as a partner and a collaborator with the new city council. And that's why it's really critical that temperament and the ability to be collaborative and partner and stay at the table is essential. It is essential characteristics of our new leaders. And also, executive level experience matters in this transition too. The knowledge of how to navigate government systems, and as well as having trusted and accountable relationships with all jurisdictional levels in the community. Those are important qualities that we need in this transitional period to set a strong foundation for our new government.
Thank you. Ms. Osthus, 90 seconds, James, question.
Hello, my name is Liv Osthus. It's
Osthus.
Norwegian for Viva Las Vegas. Yeah, people get it
I was
all the
wondering.
time. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about Liv. Liv. Yes, the new role of mayor will be radically different. I'm so excited about this new form of governance where I think the mayor can really represent what's best about Portland, that I threw my name in the hat for mayor. I feel strongly that the environment is first and foremost on all Portlanders' minds, even ahead of houselessness and addiction. I think addiction is actually a normal state when we are so separated from the earth. And therefore, I have gone way outside my comfort zone to advocate for these causes. I do believe our new mayor's role is to be a visionary, to be a true leader who sees a vision and says, follow me, everybody. Because the city council is tasked with the legislation. The bureaus are going to have professionals in charge of them, and we'll have a city administrator to really do the nuts and bolts. Yes, the mayor hires the chief of police. Yes, the mayor hires the city administrator. Important jobs. But truly, I want a mayor who leads with vision, who sees everybody in East Portland, in North Portland, along the hills, and reflects the very best of them to themselves, to the nation, and to the world. And that's why I'm running. I feel called by the buffalo of the prairie to run downtown and use my buffalo hooves to chop up the dirt and let new things grow. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Whitman.
Well, thank you, gotcha. Thank you to 350 PDX Sunrise Movement. Wonderful to have you. Wonderful to be here. You know, 4 years ago when I ran for city council, I would say that Mingus and I, who ran at the same time, we had maybe 25–30% of all questions were climate related. This year, this election, I would be hard pressed to say maybe 5%. So when we think about the emergency we have before us, it's a pleasure to be before you tonight. And I really appreciate this forum, primarily focused on the environment and climate. So thank you for that. When we talk about the role of the mayor, it is a pivotal time for Portland. We're changing from more of a group of 5 mini mayors where we saw the struggles with silo and budgets and really different goals rather than an executive type focus where we had a vision where are we going and setting out where we're going and then determining the path forward. We have a unique opportunity now where the mayor is no longer going to be a legislator. And that's a good thing because if you look at what they spent their time on, you know, there's about 800, 900 bills per year that are passed. 80 to 90% of them are unanimous. We now have 12 counselors that are going to be your neighbors. So you have a chance to really determine the course of our city on policy. But the mayor has a unique role where they are no longer a part of a committee. They're the CEO of our city, somebody who can be singularly focused on making sure that we're hitting executive leadership. It's an exciting time and I'm looking forward to speaking with you more about it.
Thank you, Commissioner Mingus.
Let me start out by thanking everybody for being here today. I'm gonna talk fast because this is a big and important topic. I'll tell you, we are on the brink of the biggest change our city has ever seen. Moving forward, starting on January 1, we will have an entirely new form of government. And it's gonna frankly look a lot like what we see at the state legislature or in Congress. So moving forward, starting on January 1, city council will be responsible for setting policy, much like Congress or the state legislature does. And after ordinances are passed, they go over to the mayor and the city administrator who's responsible for implementing those policies. So you want a mayor who is basically focused on efficiently administering the will of the voters, the will of the people. I'll tell you, I think I'm in a good position to do that. Currently, as your infrastructure commissioner, I'm in charge of half of the city's budget and 95% of the city's assets. In other words, on a day-to-day basis, I functionally run the city or much of the Liv city. I also want to point out that it's not just about administering stuff. The mayor also has an important representational role. The mayor will be the only elected person on council who has a citywide constituency. So we have to, the mayor is going to be the one person in the room who's looking out for the city as a whole. The mayor is also going to be an ambassador for the city at the state level, national and federal level. And finally, in times of crisis, the mayor is going to be our leader. And I look forward to being your leader. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any rebuttal? Yeah. Wise choice. All right, our next question. In the position of mayor, what would be your approach to prioritizing climate, sustainability, and environmental justice? I'm gonna mess this up again, last name, Osthus. Yes. You practiced it the wrong way.
Osthus, it's like East House. Maybe that'll help.
Thank you.
So, the position of the mayor, prioritizing climate, sustainability, and environmental justice. So the first priority is really awareness. Make sure people know what our priorities are, what we're dealing with, center the river in dialogue, have acknowledgement of where we are and a vision about where we want to be so that we can connect those data points to go where we want to be and have transparency along the way there. I think that the river should be centered in all of our imaginations as not just an inconvenience to be bridged, but as something that connects us all. Let's make sure it's healthy. The feds owe us billions of dollars for Superfund cleanup. Let's make sure that our new mayor agitates for state, federal, metro, whatever coordination can be maintained so that the proper funding and the proper energy is given to that huge task. Neighborhood emergency teams. There are a lot of neighborhoods that really have robust NETs, as they're called, but a lot of neighborhoods don't. So let's make sure that we are prepared for climate crises because those happen every season now. Make sure that every neighbor knows where they can go for food, water, cooling, heating, and just companionship. Thank you.
Not the flowers.
So I've had the good pleasure of leading an advanced transportation company for many, many years, and it's been a core value. So I talk in terms of core values a lot, and I'll really center my answers on that. At the company I own and operate, we have three key core values: quality, safety, and sustainability. So every decision we make focuses on sustainability. And when you do that and you don't focus on profits, you make some extraordinary developments and some decisions, but then you often always end up more profitable. And when you care for your staff as well, it's an amazing transformational approach. But when it comes to sustainability, I want to focus more on the environmental justice standpoint. We oftentimes think about climate in terms of CO2, but I really focus more on the black carbon because that's a surface pollution that really affects local warming, and it also primarily resides along transportation corridors. And so when you think about environmental justice, and black carbon is primarily one of the byproducts from diesel, and our transportation system primarily runs on diesel. If we can reduce and remove black carbon from our transportation system, we actually disproportionately benefit those along transportation corridors and improve outcomes improve health and respiratory outcomes. But at the same regard, when you reduce black carbon, you reduce local warming. At the company I own and operate, we are a fossil fuel-free transportation company in Portland. It's something I'm very proud of, and it's something I'm really going to strive to find more staff in Portland as well. Thank you.
Commissioner Mingus, same question.
Thank you very much. So the two pieces to this question, climate sustainability and environmental justice, I want to address both. In terms of climate sustainability, our core goal is to make Portland carbon neutral by 2050. That gives us about 25 years. Good news here, folks. I think that we can achieve this goal. Most of the carbon that gets put into the air comes from our transportation space and our housing space. I've been your Peabody commissioner. I am incredibly optimistic and excited about some of the changes that we're seeing here. We can be carbon neutral in the transportation space in a matter of just a few decades. My friend Keith right here is a great example of how we can get there. I think we can implement similar changes in the housing space too, with new building technologies and new building codes. And I will credit my friend and colleague, Commissioner Rubio, for making important progress there. Now, the second piece of the question is environmental justice. For me, in this context, that means helping vulnerable Portlanders adjust to a changing climate. My goal here is to make sure that no Portlander freezes to death because our climate is changing or dies of heat stroke because our climate is changing. And frankly, I think that we have important tools that can help us get there. Our Clean Energy Fund, for example, again, I'll give Carmen some credit here, has been leaning forward and helping people access heat pumps and whatnot. I was a little bit agnostic at the beginning, but I see that we can achieve those goals through that mechanism. In other words, there is good news ahead.
Thank you. And last but not least, Commissioner Rubio.
I agree with everything all of my colleagues up here are saying. All of these issues are super important in Portland. And also the way that I would approach this is absolutely first at the forefront of my mind is our climate goal. And in 2020, actually 2022 as well, City Council declared a climate emergency. And we have goals that we have set out for ourselves that by 2030, we're going to cut our emissions by 50% or more compared to 1990 levels. And then by 2050, reduce carbon emissions to net zero. But we only have 6 years to meet our first goal in 2030. 6 years, or else that tipping point comes and then net zero is virtually impossible. So we have work to do and we are already behind, and I feel that urgency to do that work. So that is at the top of my head when I think about how do we set the table for climate action? How do we set the table for smart investments and strategic investments? When we know we can't do everything, we got to prioritize those moves that are going to get us the most action and movement and steps forward. My number one goal is to do everything we can then to move us in that direction. And climate is about, those goals and meeting and making action and taking steps on those goals. And sustainability and EJ is really about how we do it and what values we use as we do it. And I'm running out of time. I would love to talk to you about more.
Candidates, any follow-up or rebuttal? Well, one last question on the topic. Raise your hand if climate change and climate resilience funding will be a top priority for you as mayor. Fabulous. Encouraging. Let's move on to the subject of climate governance. Portland has experienced increasingly extreme weather, as mentioned before, with wildfires in the summer and snowstorms in the winter becoming more common and devastating, demonstrating the importance of our mayor's prioritization of climate resilience and sustainability and the response to the climate crisis Portlanders face. And this question goes to Wilson first. What is your understanding of our current city policies in relation to climate and sustainability, and what specific environmental programs would you support in those efforts?
So Carmen outlined what our Portland Climate Action Plan is. It's 50% by 2030. She's right, it's 6 years. So we have to be an urgent focus. There's not a day to waste. So I'll tell you in terms of what I'm going to do based on what I've done. So at Titan, the company I own and operate, where sustainability is our core value, in 2018, our metric tons of carbon was 2,321. So since that time in Portland, we've removed all fossil fuels. We've reduced almost all of it in Oregon, Washington, and Idaho. Today, 5 years later, we're at 1,540, 34% reduction. So when we have these outside goals and say, can we achieve 50%? Yes, but we need those visions. We need people who've accomplished that. We're on target to do a 46% reduction this year. We just received the first fleet of heavy-duty electric trucks in the Northwest. So I want all of you to walk away and say, can it be done? That's an outsized goal. It rarely is accomplished. And I'm telling you, if we can do it at a mid-sized company, somebody who has experience, I want you to know we can, but it's going to be difficult because all those changes I put in play were very hard. We're swimming upstream, but we can do this together. So I wanted to just give you some examples of accomplishments that carriers and companies are achieving. We can do this. It's going to be hard. We're going to make changes, but I have the vision. I have the record of success, and I'm looking forward to Portland being the cleanest city in America.
Commissioner, any question?
Thank you very much. We got two key documents of the city which describe our our climate goals and our implementation plan. One, we have our climate action plan, which basically describes what we're trying to achieve and what the timelines for that are. Bottom line, basically we want to make Portland carbon neutral by the time we get to 2025 or 2050. So we got about 25 years to get there. And then we have another important document. That document is our climate emergency work plan, which basically details to us how we're doing in our efforts to implement that particular plan. I study that plan, and I'll tell you, when you take a look at how we're doing and where the bottlenecks are, we got a couple of problems. One are resources. Moving from our current economy to our next economy, frankly, costs a lot of money. The Clean Energy Fund is an important resource here, but it's not nearly enough. So I think we have to carefully look at how we go about dispensing those dollars. And frankly, we have a unique model there. We have citizens in charge. One of the insights I would have in this space is that if you take a look at the programs who funded for carbon reduction so far, I think they've been a little bit expensive. We're paying right now about $1,000 per ton to get carbon out of the air. Typically, you see other jurisdictions paying about $200 to $600 per ton. So I think we need to begin to reduce the cost of moving forward in this space. But I also want to tell you, at least in transportation, I'm incredibly excited. We are very close to being a fossil free in terms of getting to where you want to go. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Rubio.
So, we just heard an outline too. I won't repeat what was just said, but we do have the climate emergency work plan, which my office was essential in leading, bringing to council in 22 again with an action plan, and our ability to pay for those actions. The total amount far exceeds any amount of money that we have in the general fund, and just by comparison, the amount of requests we get in for PSEF investments far exceeds the amount that PSEF has available. So the need is great and the need is there. So we have these two tools. We have that climate action or the emergency work plan that is a roadmap for us and for our staff to follow as it pertains to the jurisdiction of the city and what we can do right now in our bureaus that are real and tangible things. The other thing we have is PSEF, the Portland Clean Energy Fund, which is a huge opportunity for us in Portland. It is one of a kind in the nation, probably in the world. And yes, let's support it and let's keep it safe and away from prying fingers. We need to make sure that we keep PSEF intact and intended for what it was intended to do. And while it's an opportunity, it's a precious resource that we have to protect. So that's why I led the effort to put guardrails on it so that we can make sure that we have the flexibility to be innovative, but also do more partnerships with community, get more money out into community. So those are two important tools that will help us get there.
Thank you. Portland, we are on the vanguard of environmental thinking as far as cities go, and that is because our citizens think of the environment really first. I mean, I have a list of all of our wonderful plans: the climate action plan, the clean energy fund, sustainable transportation, and yet, in the last 4 years, we have really had our we've been caught with our pants down, let's just say, by the fires, by the cold, by the heat. So we've got to do more. And again, I think the mayor's role is to just really insist that this is priority one, that all of these wonderful initiatives, Carmen's especially, that they are funded and those funds remain for what was intended, like for PSEF funds. The transportation, we've got to make it abundantly available. TriMet to make sure that those are so accessible that everybody takes it. Nobody wants to drive anymore because it's so appealing to get on public transit so that we can have these fewer emissions that we all want. Yeah, 2030 is not 6 years away, it's 5 years away. And we are really, who knows if we'll be here in 2050. So we've got to make these goals stated with more urgency, just really have a mayor who makes these priority one, because it's on all the kids' minds. It's obviously on all your minds, and it is of utmost importance to not just the humans, to the water, to the soil, to the animals. Thank you.
Thank you. Think about those answers and the commitment to do so. Do you have any rebuttal? Any follow-up? Already.
Can I ask a question? If you want to ask for a follow-up, do you do it at the end of the cycle?
I was in every time everyone has answered, I'm gonna give opportunity to follow up and rebuttal. Great question.
Thank you.
Alrighty, our next one is just gonna start with you as well. So Commissioner Mingus, Portland has made 5 climate action plans in the last couple of decades.
Yeah.
But it's been a hard time implementing them. As mayor, how could you make sure climate action plans and other similar city goals are implemented successfully?
Great question. And I think the city's well positioned to achieve this goal. In the climate space, I have 2 goals, and these have been embraced and endorsed by city council. We're trying to get to carbon neutral in 25 years. It's a big task, but I think we can get it done. And the other thing, and this is more of a personal goal to me, I want to make sure no one freezes to death or dies of heat stroke because of changing climate, particularly amongst our most vulnerable communities. So we're talking about people who look like me, people who are disabled, people who are poor. One of the ways that we can do this, I believe, is number one, to carefully manage our climate action work plan. If we implement those goals, we will and manage them carefully, we will achieve this. I'll also tell you, I'm excited for our new form of government. We'll remove our different bureaus under the mayor's office and under the city administrator's office. Currently, we have 70 employees in the city who are working on climate change in one form or another. I believe it's time that we begin to coordinate those services. Right now, they're divided across, potentially 24 different bureaus. The other thing, which I think is particularly important, and I look forward to sticking around to actually implement, is to create a new bureau in the city of Portland, and that's a natural resources bureau. We need to have a holistic, coordinated approach to managing our natural areas. I have been beating this drum for as long as I've been on council, and I'm looking forward to finally getting that done as your next mayor. So thank you very much.
Mr. Rubio. Same question, 90 seconds.
Thank you. So the city is really great at setting a lot of aspirational goals and benchmarks that we don't follow. And that there's no regular cadence of actions over the last 2 decades to improve our decline of carbon and use of fossil fuel. And we just have 6 years left. So I take this deadline very, very seriously. And that's why in the time that I've been in office, I've really worked hard to do the following things and continue to make progress with the following things. I've re-envisioned and elevated the Chief Sustainability Officer role and elevated in this new form of government to report directly to the city manager with new expanded authority. I also led the creation of a new Climate Sustainability Commission, a body that will hold our city accountable to green commitments and eliminate action and do climate action plans. And this is a body that is going to recommend serious policies to city council to deliberate and actually put into action. So I'm very excited about that. And also for the last 4 years, I've worked very hard, as I mentioned before, to make meaningful changes to PSEP to protect it. Some from colleagues who want to roll it back, and also strengthening policies, procedures, and guardrails to ensure continuity and also ability to be more innovative, which also has unlocked the ability to invest hundreds of millions of dollars back into the community where it needs to be. I've also led work on renewable fuel standards for the city, and it was great to work with my colleague Keith on some of that, and as well as working with the county to phase out leaf blowers. And next, CEI responding, more to come.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think we're all yearning for accountability, for clear, measurable goals, and for transparency. We want to see these laws that we've enacted actually have measurable success. I do see that some of the data, though, is possibly skewed because we keep envisioning a growth model when what we really want is a sustainability model. And I think that to agitate for that first. I do think we'd see some different data when we started asking for different studies. I think that's very important. But like several of you others have mentioned, we also really need to work on our relationships with the county, with the feds, and with the state. Let's get this all coordinated so that as much money as possible goes to the initiatives rather to the bureaucracy at the top. We'll have this new council. I think so many of them are really activated to make this a first priority. So a great relationship between the mayor's office and the council, between the neighborhoods and the mayor's office through the council, or just because the mayor's door is open to hear these concerns. I think all of these could lead to measurable improvements, and that we're all desperate to hear some real data in that regard. Thank you.
Mr. Wilson.
Thank you. So I'll talk about the action part of the action plan. It's about partnerships, and it's about listening to best practices, finding them, and then implementing them. There's a lot of committees. We can set up a lot of bureaus. We can create a lot of positions, but we have to take action. And Carmen alluded to the renewable fuel standard. So I've been working a bill through the state legislature. Senate Bill 803 was the chief petitioner. Kate Lieber, as our senator, was our chief sponsor, extraordinary senator. Our goal was to reduce petroleum diesel from Oregon and phase it out by the year 2030. We're gaining traction. However, Republicans walked out, so we didn't get our committee in our hearing. But the good part about that is Commissioner Rubio and her team, Kyle Deisner and Andrea Jacobs, called and said, we see merit. We believe we can pass this on the Portland side. We worked together, crafted a bill. Her team did an outstanding job crafting it. Commissioner Mingus and the other 3 commissioners supported her. They passed it. We now have a renewable fuel standard that is the best in the nation. By the year 2030, we're going to reduce all petroleum diesel, replace it with renewable energy. So to give you an idea, petroleum diesel has a carbon intensity of about a 100. Any energy source used in our transport division or segment has to be a 40 carbon intensity or below, a 60% reduction. Congratulations to Carmen. Congratulations to our commissioner. It was through partnership that we took action and we succeeded on behalf of Portland. We can achieve our Portland climate action plan.
Thank you. Thank you. Did anyone have any comment or rebuttal?
I do. That bill alone, that renewable fuel standard alone is a 9% reduction in overall metric tons of carbon in Portland. One bill, extraordinary.
I love it. All right, one more question pertaining to this. One of the main roles as mayor would be hiring a city administrator, as Commissioner Mingus referenced. What criteria would you look for in a city administrator to make sure the city's climate, sustainability, and environmental justice goals continue to be met and improved? And I believe we are back to Ms. Rubio.
Thank you. So outside of, the regular qualifications that we would all see about, good communicator, someone who has some knowledge about change management, and also, understanding how cities function or systems of cities function. My number one criteria outside those qualifications is that this individual takes responsibility and has a deep understanding about how we need to make progress on our climate emergency timeline. That is squarely within the role of the city administrator and our jurisdiction to do. And that we are operating within this and a clear understanding that this is an existential priority for our city. I'd also look for the ability, talking about communication, to work with groups across difference, because we need the ability of that person to also be a leader in the just transition from within the city to externalize that ethic and that value into the city and make it part of the culture of how we do business. Thank you.
I would have little to add to that. I think that if I were elected, my very first priority is environmental justice, and I would seek that very first in a city administrator, somebody who had a proven track record in climate policy, urban sustainability, environmental justice, in addition to being able to navigate a city through this very intense time of transition, because we need a successful Portland in order to make any of these goals happen. That's certain, but we really want to make sure this person knows the history of some of the disparities on our neighborhoods and how climate justice has not served East Portland, that there are simple actionable things that are high on the priority list of Portlanders. And so, yeah, that would be the first priority I would look for in a city administrator. Thanks.
Can you remind me how much time we have?
90 seconds.
90 seconds. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So to give you kind of some specifics on the city of Portland, doing some research on our bureau directors, top 12 bureaus, only 2 of our directors have 5 years in the job or more. So we have a transitional government where retention is so low, and we're expecting a high-performing organization with somebody who has months or only a few years. You cannot meet that culture. You cannot meet those high standards with an open door where someone's coming and going. So it's not a person specific. Yes, the city administrator is critical. It's important that they live, eat, and breathe the quality, safety, and sustainability. But it's the culture of the organization that counts, because those are the people that are going to be there tomorrow. Those are the city administrators that are there. We have to train our culture to every decision we make has to have an emissions focus, or we're not going to get where we're going. So it cannot be person specific. It has to be city specific for all of us. It's the culture we live and eat and breathe that we have to bring forward for our city.
Thank you very much. I may disagree with my friend Keith here. Sometimes I think people do matter. I'll tell you, I recently hired a deputy city administrator to run the city's infrastructure bureaus. And I hired someone who has worked in these spaces before. I think if you want to protect the climate, you have to hire a city administrator who is deeply committed to the goals that our next mayor, and frankly, our city has. You can tell the kind of mayor I'm going to be by how I go about hiring folks to serve in roles like this, like my deputy city administrator. I hired a young woman who has 2 master's degrees in public works spaces. She was a deputy city administrator out in Beaver, where she survived and navigated as that city moved from one form of government to a new form of government. She also was a deputy city administrator for public works out in Vancouver. I think experience and values matter. She's also a person of color. And I told her one of the things that I care about is doing the people's work. But as we do that, we have to include people from across the rainbow of Portlanders to help build the city of the future. And that's the kind of mayor I'll be.
Thank you for all of your answers. Does anyone have any rebuttal or follow-up that has not used theirs already? Alrighty, we'll be moving on to questions about the budget, and for these ones, the time limit is now a minute. Don't worry, we'll make some adjustments later too. As Portland's mayor, you will be setting and drafting the city budget. The first question is, what are your funding priorities for climate sustainability and environmental justice? And how would you ensure funding is allocated to achieve these priorities with awareness of the recent budget issues? Ms. Liv will be starting this one.
Feel free to call me Viva Las Vegas. It's okay. Liv Osthus here talking about the budget. So my very first priority, in our budget, we need to center the CEI hub. It's been kicked down the road for too long. It needs to be centered, and it's such a political football because it takes longer than 4 years, but there's feds on the hook, there's the state on the hook, there's private interests on the hook. Let's do whatever we can, whatever lawsuits need to happen to move this forward. I think it's time for somebody to really speak to that, as unpopular as it may be financially or politically. This is for generations. This is for our river, our watershed, our people in Linton and Northeast Portland, for their safety and generational health of our city. Thank you.
Mr. Wilson, same question.
When you're determining the budget, we have to have a metric ton equation to every dollar as well. In other words, if we're going to invest in moving our city forward, we have to do return on investment. It's amazing when you're investing in climate change, in climate resources, it's oftentimes much more expensive than just buying what we're used to buying, whether it's a diesel engine or something of that nature. We have to be able to value not only the dollar, but also the metric ton that's associated with it. But I want to just explain. So when you purchase green technology, whether it's electric or renewable diesel or whatever the case may be, if you really look at the numbers at the end of the day, you'll find that it's the lowest cost and the most reduced emissions when you spend a little bit more. And we see that in electric technology. I see that in the electric fleet that I've gained. It was $400,000 per electric truck. A light model was $150,000. At the first view, you would think that's too expensive. That's going to be a budget breaker. But in the end of the day, we were able to reduce our operating costs by over 20%. You see, it was a win for the city in terms of metric ton and also operating expenses that are lower.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Mr. Mingus.
Can you repeat the question?
Absolutely. What are the funding priorities for climate, sustainability, and environmental justice? And how would you ensure funding is allocated to achieve these priorities?
I'm going to start to sound like a broken record, but that's because I'm disciplined in how I go about doing this work. There are two foci in my climate agenda. One is reducing the amount of carbon in the air. Our goal is to get that to zero in the next 25 years. That's going to be making investments in the transportation space and in the housing space. I know the transportation space quite well. Basically, what we're talking about there is investing in building out our green or our electric infrastructure and also supporting active transportation options. You know, being able to walk, ride your bike. Public transportation is quite important too. TriMet is doing important work with electrifying their fleet. The other side of the equation is sustainability and environmental justice. Here in that space, what we're really talking about is helping especially vulnerable communities adapt to our changing climate. We all remember that summer not too long ago that got to 108. We need more air conditioning or more heat pumps out there to help literally people survive. Thank you.
Thank you. Last but not least, 1 minute, Commissioner Rubio.
So for me, I think number one in the budget process, my top goal would be holding PISA protected and above all. That would be my first goal. And then also, I would work to plan for extreme weather planning in connection to exploring how we take that opportunity to leverage it into more community resiliency hubs, because this is the new normal. The next thing I would do is work with and empower the sustainability officer to really engage with them, to be engaged with community about setting collectively and co-creating our priority list for the city budget, because there will be trade-offs involved. So we have to really look at each one to be strategic, which is the one that needs to happen now so that we can do others later and so on. But I'll tell you a few of my favorite ones, just so that you know. So definitely continue with the green infrastructure investments and shade equity goals across the entire city. Also, climate resiliency hubs, sustainable housing, and then taking care of our rivers and green workforce.
Thank you. Any rebuttal for any the commissioners or excuse me, any of the candidates? I was gonna sense it. Many of you have alluded to it. This is our next question. PSEF. The Portland Clean Energy Community Benefits Fund was used this year to shore up budget shortfalls for the city. But many PSEF advocates are concerned about this precedent and encourage the city to find other funds to pay for normal city operations. Since the city's own report estimates it will cost $49 billion to meet the challenges of the climate change, PSEF funds are important to meet those expenses. In drafting the city budget, what is your position on using PSEF in ways that aren't in line with its voter-approved intent? Mr. Wilson.
When we signed for the PSEF, when we voted for it on the ballot measure, we were told it's going to bring in about $40 million. It's now bringing in roughly $200 million per year. That's much higher than it was intended, but I do want to focus on the word intended. It was intended for it to be the first in the nation focus on environmental and metric ton reduction and racial equity. We need to return it to its intended purpose, using it for Portland Street response and getting into a budget argument for that and or other uses. We heard about the Keller being used, and for transportation backfill and things of that nature, we have to focus on it being on its intended, on its singularly focused, because again, this is what we voted for. If we're going to be the cleanest city in the nation, we have to make sure all those dollars are allocated for emissions reduction and racial equity as it was intended.
Mr. Mina, same question.
I opposed Carmen Rubio's proposal to divert clean energy funds towards supporting Portland Street Response. Although Portland Street Response, folks, is an incredibly important tool. I recognize that, but I thought that was an inappropriate use of funds. And I will also push back on one of the premises of the questions. It's my understanding that here I'm going to praise Carmen. I believe she opened up the process so that city bureaus could pitch climate projects to the Clean Energy Fund. Those folks are citizens. Frankly, I am incredibly proud of the Peabody projects that we brought forward. Amongst other things, we had made this pitch to the PSEF committee saying, hey, Peabody has a vision for building a new streetcar. It'll promote both development, but it'll also get cars off the roads, and it'll help us get cleaner. I think that was good. And frankly, one of the important things about that is that, we can really scale that up as a city in the way that nonprofits could. Thank you very much.
So one clarifying question. So you're saying that the bureau pitched ideas are in line with the voter approved intent?
Yes, and so I can't speak to every idea, like I didn't support using PSEF funds to support Portland Street Response, but I sure as heck did support Peabody pitching climate-friendly proposals to the PSEF fund. We were doing great works around, for example, promoting green public transportation. That's very important, and I will not apologize for that.
Thank you for that clarification. Mr. Rubio.
So I absolutely support staying within the mission and intent of the PSEF ballot initiative and heavily community-centered climate investment plan, which had the involvement of hundreds of thousands, not hundreds of thousands, but probably more than 1,000 people who engaged in that plan and gave clear criteria to staff about what they want to see invested in by PSEF over the next 5 years. And this is actually exactly why we have the PSEF committee and staff, to help educate and identify what is within mission and what isn't within mission. And the last thing I'll say in response to my colleague is that there was nothing to oppose because I withdrew that idea because community talked to me about it and I listened. So that idea did not go forward. I do not believe that it is within the bounds, and I do think it's a slippery slope. So we should not be investing in anything outside of what it is.
Thank you. Yeah, I could do a really short 10-second answer that PSEF funds should always be specific to PSEF goals, but I will continue a little bit to, I think, again, we want transparency. Portlanders want to know what exactly does clean energy mean? How can we use the cleanest energy? How can we use less energy? And how can the energy that we are using, how can it be certain to go to places equitably? How can we share it equitably? I think those are all questions that PSEF can and should address, but absolutely the 10-second answer, PSEF funds are specific, used to speak PSEF goals.
We're not sure if I can answer.
I'd like to ask a follow-up.
I would say maybe one time for, or maybe if anyone have a follow-up or rebuttal has not already been said.
I do have a follow-up. I think this evening we've heard Commissioner Rubio state maybe 4 times that at least PSEP dollars should be used for projects that were in scope on basically within scope of what the voters approved, environmental projects. And then we just learned now that indeed Commissioner Rubio did bring forward the proposal to use PSEP dollars to support Portland street response. In my heart, I understand why that is an appealing project, but I guess I don't really understand the evolution of Commissioner Rubio's thinking in this space, and I'd just like to invite my friend to maybe clarify how you're thinking around the appropriate use of PSEP dollars has evolved over time. And I also want to say there ain't nothing wrong with growing and learning and looking at things different, but this is a confusing thing that I think we need to unpack.
Okay, does this?
This does not count. I would love to hear your response.
Okay. So, yeah, I think it's pretty clear, and I've been very clear about it in the media and with advocates and with everybody. When I proposed it, it was an idea. I explored that idea. I got feedback from community. I listened to community. I got feedback from actually experts in finance in the city who also advised it wasn't a good idea. And so I listened to that. And that's why I changed my mind. And it wasn't with good intent, because I was also trying to save Portland street response, but I saw how that opened a door, especially in a time when my colleagues are trying to open that door wider and take it for things that are 100% non-climate investments.
Thank you. I know that's for a lot of people in this room, so thank you for clarifying and expanding on that. That leads me to one last question. This is a raise a hand question. Raise your hand if you would commit to the protection and honoring the original intent and plans of PSEP. Unanimous. I love it. All right, this next subject matter, we're gonna give a little context if you have not already heard about it. We heard a little alluding to the CEI hub. It is a major issue for all of Portland in this critical energy infrastructure hub. A 6-mile stretch of land along the Willamette River in Northwest Portland, where 350 gallons of fuel are stored in a liquefaction zone, many of which are aging tanks that are not seismic proof. One of the companies operating this area is a Houston-based fossil fuel company, Zenith Energy. By the time the new mayor takes office in January, it is possible that a decision on the Zenith Energy pending Department of Environmental Quality, Air Quality permits will not yet have been made. Recently, over 24 city council candidates wrote a letter to them asking to delay the decision until after the new city council is seated, so they can weigh in after viewing the situation and engaging in a more robust public process. And I think we're back to Mingus. What is your, there's the question.
Okay.
What is your perspective on the Zenith Energy land use compatibility statement? And as mayor, what would be your approach to working with the city council that wants to reopen the permitting conversation and potentially revoke the permit? 90 seconds.
Thank you for this question. And I'll be straightforward. I think the next council and the next mayor need to take a look at what's happened at Zenith. You can applaud for that. And let me tell you all. Like a lot of you, I have read press coverage about the work that Commissioner Rubio's office did with Zenith that allowed this project to move forward. I don't quite understand what happened here. Frankly, after those discussions happened, the Zenith project moved forward and it didn't come back to council. I think this deserves a little bit more scrutiny in order for us to move forward. In addition to that, obviously, the facility itself represents a significant risk to the city. I'm not confident that the process here was done according to the standards that most Portlanders would want, which is why I will encourage future councils and our next mayor to get this money.
Commissioner Rubio, same question.
So I absolutely support the next council tackling these actions, and I've learned so much since I've been in my role from advocates and experts about the history of Zenith, which admittedly I did not know the broad history, and I have definitely learned all about that within the city and the community and its impact and its broken trust. As mayor, I would use all the tools that we have to scrutinize this and all the corporations engaged in dishonest dealings and lack of accountability. But we also need stronger tools and levers for this. And here's why. Currently, the Lex is an administrative permit, so it never actually came to council. So it never was going to come to council. It's an administrative decision that's made at a staff level. And when that happened, there was no vote that took place in 2022 or actually on any Lux permit. They don't happen. They happen at a staff level. That's an opportunity for us to change some of those codes and procedures. And then when I was reassigned the Bureau, BDS, it was already issued. So I didn't issue it. It was issued under Commissioner Ryan, who's an entirely different person. And so that, when it transferred to me, it had already been issued. And we were getting heavily advised that we did not have a legal standing to withdraw that Lex. So we looked into it. I've been diving into it since then more deeply and learning a lot about it and learning that I really want to fix this issue because it is so important to community. And the more I learn about it, the more enraged I get about those broken promises. So I am very committed to focusing on supporting this council direction and using my authority immediately while expanding what we need to do upstream.
Thank you, Commissioner. If I have the same question, 90 seconds.
Thank you. Yeah, this Zenith has been a terrible partner. They have dissembled, they have been disingenuous, they lack transparency, they lie. They are large and rich and sneaky, and they have done this throughout America. And I am not surprised to hear that they have wormed their way through council and made these things happen in spite of so much of our protest. Zenith violated lobbying regulations in 2022. I would ask our city attorney to pursue that. It might just be ceremonial, but it would mean something just to have that document. Again, just a real demand for urgency, for honesty, and we do not need more fossil fuels rolling through the city. It's a giant black snake. We need less, and that's for generations. And that's why you're all here tonight, is to protect our river for generations. And I really thank you for being here. Thank you.
Mr. Murphy, same question, 90 seconds.
Yeah, I agree with the restart. There's been so much press. There's been so much misappropriation, and we're not following that permit as written, and we've read. So let's bring it from a staff level. Let's bring it to the council level because of its visibility. Let's make sure it's transparent. Let's trust our new council to review, to make a vote. As mayor, then I will follow the lead of the council, and we will either issue the permit or we will revoke the permit. But let's bring it out into the light, and so we can look at it all together, review it, and determine the future based on our Portland Climate Action Plan, and see if it has merit going forward.
Any rebuttal?
Yeah, I got it.
30 seconds, by the way, 30 seconds.
Sure, this is gonna seem like I'm picking on my friend, Commissioner Rubio, and I'm not. Frankly, the topics we're talking about today largely live in her portfolio. I didn't fully understand her question. I think a lot of you have read the articles about Commissioner Rubio's office meeting with representatives from Zenith, and then the project moves forward. Excuse me, Keith, I'm not sure. I think this might be like one of these articles that refers to that. Commissioner Rubio, can you just explain to us sort of what did happen there?
Well, it's in my public calendar because I have to meet with people that I disagree with all the time. Not everyone on council meets with people they disagree with, but I happen to be one person that does that. And so I went out there meeting, and actually it was with Commissioner Ryan because he was over BDS at that time. And they invited us to go, and that's where they had made public their intention around pursuing different avenues. That's the extent of it. I left, and there was no secret or backroom deal, anything like that. I publicly put my calendar, everyone I meet on the calendar, very transparently. So I really dislike the implication that I'm hearing here. It saddens me. It's very cynical, because that's not how I like to do things at all. But also, what matters here is what we do with it and what we learned about it. And what I want to do is make sure we change it. And with all due respect, Commissioner, not once have you ever brought up Zenith to me in any of our conversations. So if it was such a big issue for you, I would have loved to have heard that. Or did you talk to it about Dan because it was actually under his commission, under his portfolio?
Thank you both. We are gonna move on. Our next question does pertain to it as well. I do specifically want to know what you as mayor would address with the climate, ecological, and public health dangers posed by the critical energy infrastructure hub. What preparations would you make to make sure Linton residents have safe routes in case of emergency? What would you do to begin reducing the risk to the river and the whole region's air quality if or when a major earthquake or fire damages the tanks? I believe Mr. Wilson is starting us off.
Kind of writing down the 3 R's. So the first and foremost is we have to reduce the risk. We just have to really reduce liquid fuels as a whole from our environment. We have to continue to invest in EVs, both in terms of cars and heavy duty electric vehicles. We have to remove petroleum diesel, which I explained, moved forward several bills. It's very toxic and it is dangerous. And an earthquake spilling into our water, it's the same thing as a Deepwater Horizon and a Valdez spill. So we reduce that. We also have to focus on ensuring those that are at the CEI hub right now. So if it does happen, the insurance and the cost isn't shouldered by Portland, the state, or the federal government. If you're going to use those tanks next to our river, we need to make sure we have a mitigation plan for that risk as well. And then we have to start removing those tanks as we can, mitigate the risk, make sure that they're earthquake strong, but then we have to start removing those tanks, especially the older ones. It's going to take time, it's expensive, but we have to be intentional. We have to begin the process, because the third R is we have to return our waterfront back to Portland. When we have 6 miles of infrastructure, industrial infrastructure taken away from us, we are a river city. We need to take back and return that water to its intended purpose, which is all of Portlanders enjoyment.
Thank you. Yes, this is my #1 priority, making sure our river is safe and healthy for generations, and the CEI hub is a ticking time bomb. We all know that. So the mayor has to use all of their power to increase awareness so that people do agitate for this, because a lot of people actually don't even know about it. I know that you people in Linton are working really hard for awareness, and I think the mayor's office can and must amplify that so that there is the political will to say this has to move. Whoever's on the hook for this privately needs to make sure that they take care of the problem and see what federal, state, city, county, metro fundings are available. It's kind of a unique opportunity for us all to work together to do what is right. And if we phrase it like that, maybe more people can get on board. As for Linton and escape routes, when inevitably this disaster does happen, I think we need really robust neighborhood emergency teams, and we need to use mapping. There's, PSU, there's a lot of amazing programs that really have mapping skills, and we can put people on it to make sure that our residents get out as expeditiously as possible in the inevitability of a giant earthquake that makes it unlivable in Linton because of the CEI. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Rubio.
So to me, this is one of the existential issues of our generation here in Portland. The dangers of the CEI hub, as we've all talked about, are overwhelmingly in need of being addressed and long have been in need for decades. And I'm thrilled to hear, truly, when I go out and I meet all these other candidates that are running, that interest and that conviction to do something is present in practically everyone I'm talking to. So that gives me hope for the city council and what's ahead in the future. So I strongly support Multnomah County's work doing risk assessments, and I'm really proud to share that my team and I have been working on the city side to partner with Commissioner Myron and her stellar work at the county on issues of preparedness and risk bonding. happening to ensure that the CEI companies are prepared to ensure the worst case disaster scenarios for earthquakes, fires, et cetera, and also impacting the aging storage tanks. And the city recently received a grant to increase our ability to partner and plan together with the community and all of our jurisdictional partners. And I have also directed our government relations staff to pursue funds at the state legislative level for planning and cost analysis of what it would take to break down those tanks and what it would take to actually do meaningful change in that region. That's a cost analysis that we should have done decades ago, but we need to start that right now. It's important to get this started so that they will be on work plans post-transition as well. So the bottom line is we need to protect our communities, we need to protect our river and get this done.
Thank you, Commissioner.
I want to be fair, here. I've raised some hard questions tonight, but this is a space where I really do want to praise Commissioner Rubio. She's helped manage the space, and I think the ideas that she put on the table are sound. I would replicate many of them. If I were to add to the list of reforms Commissioner Rubio suggested, I would point out that the city has an obligation to enforce state law, which requires those facilities to comply with seismic standards. I think there's some compatibility work, or there's some work that needs to be done in that space. Focusing in on what the city can do right away. And here, maybe this is a chance for me to criticize myself. I think there's a lot of work that can and needs to be done over at TBOT, Bureau of Emergency Management, to identify, clearly mark, and build out safe evacuation routes. In addition to that, I'll praise, I think, really innovative work that's being done at the county around risk bonding. That sounds like a great idea to me. But the long term, and by long term, I mean 25 years, we just got to get at it and processing fossil fuels along the way. That's just crazy. But listen, folks, as your transportation commissioner, I do understand the transportation space and the trends that are going here, and I'm confident that with appropriate leadership, the city of Portland can have a fossil-free transportation network within 25 years. And indeed, I think we can make huge progress on this immediately.
Thank you. Then we have any follow-up or rebuttal? I have two final questions that are pertaining to it. By a raise of hands, do you see the CI Hub as an eminent and threatening issue to the Portland community? All right. The next question. If you were given the tie-breaking vote, would you revoke Zenith's permit? By a raise of hands.
Did you say the question?
If you had the ability to vote, if say you were the one, they were tie-breaking votes, would you vote to revoke the permit? By raise of hands.
Legal standing.
If you had legal standing, this is a hypothetical. Do we yes? No? All right. Final call. Would you revoke the permit, given the opportunity?
If there was malfeasance, if we find out that there was not transparent.
Oh, sorry.
If there's been malfeasance, as it's been stated, then the answer would be yes.
Happening on the fly, yes. Alrighty. I just want to let you know that you really want to forego this? All right. We're going to forego some of the transportation and Multnomah County relationship questions. Just to let you know. We will have an opportunity. We're going to go through some audience submitted questions first to make sure that we get through those. Alrighty. So I think Ms. Osthus, this will be your question first. So I apologize, it's one that we were not given to you ahead of time, but was submitted to us. The question is, who pays for street trees and canopy maintenance? Yes, please pass the mic down.
Who pays for street trees and canopy maintenance? I recently bought a street tree, well, with Friend of Trees. It was a wonderful collaboration between me and that wonderful nonprofit, but I believe the city should pay for street trees and street tree maintenance. This is a critical shade equity. They're the lungs of our city and they are so beautiful. My campaign really centers beauty and aesthetics, and I ask the trees for guidance every day, and they are housing for millions of creatures. The trees are tops, and the city should pay for them.
I agree that the city should pay, and the city does pay now, thanks to PSEF. PSEF is now investing in tree maintenance to make it affordable for low income and equitably access maintenance and care across the city, which has been a burden to some low income folks before. So PSEF is helping. Also, Parks does its share through its forestry department as well.
There you go. I'm not quite sure if this is a value question, a value-based question, or an empirical-based question.
I'm excited to hear your answer either way.
Okay. Well, like my colleagues, I very much support the city of Portland helping to pay for street trees. And indeed, since we've been on council, and I'll credit Commissioner Rubio here, PSEF has moved into that space. Incredibly important to our neighborhoods, especially East Portland, where I spend a lot of my day today, which lacks tree canopies. If we're talking in terms of who actually pays for street trees in the real world at this moment in time, it's a mixed bag. Parks doesn't work here, BMOP doesn't work here. I'm sure there are other bureaus that make investments in this space. You know, frankly, that's one of the problems with the city of Portland right now, is that we have many different bureaus who are not being particularly coordinated, which is why we struggle as a city to grow our tree canopy, for example, which is a goal that we all share. I am excited about the future in our next form of government, because we'll be much better at treating Portlanders fairly and getting trees planted.
Thank you.
So Commissioner Mingus talked about East Portland. We have a real dearth of trees in these heat islands, and that should be addressed through Portland Clean Energy Fund, because we need a comprehensive approach to tree canopy. It's so valuable to our city as a whole. It's our identity. And we really do need to have an isolated, not mixed bag, but a central focus where we're investing in it and maintaining it in one particular area instead of many.
Thank you. All right. This one is a raise a hands question about shade equity. Do you consider shade equity or trees to be critical infrastructure? Raise the hands. There we go. Moving on to another question from the audience. Given that the Rose Quarter project still is has a $1 billion funding gap, would you be open to a streamlined version of the project that capped the freeway without widening it? Let me start with you.
That's interesting. We'd have to see the plan on that. You know, the caps are the most important part for me. I grew up in North Portland. The Albina Vision Trust is a very important project. It's a very important partner to me. The caps are primary. How it looks and how it ends up, I'm completely open to looking at. It certainly is extremely costly what we're looking at right now.
Commissioner Mingus.
There's a blood to keep there, or not. Well, let me say this. I am a critical player. Indeed, I'm probably the critical player in the city of Portland to make the Rose Quarter project work. I'll tell you, if you remember where the Rose Quarter project was before I became PBOX commissioner, it was dead. One of the things I've done in office, thanks to the help of my staff and partners throughout this state, is I've revived that. I'm incredibly excited about this. This is literally one of the most innovative projects in the entire nation. I will tell you, the White House is paying attention to this, because this is a model for how we can go about righting the wrongs of the past, creating, as in, you know, there used to be a Black community there that got split asunder. We're going to cap the freeway, build affordable housing and a new neighborhood in this space. I remember when this was dead, and I will tell you, should I be your next mayor, I will work to make sure that we actually implement this. And I will tell you, although we got very talented people running for mayor right now, but none of them have the experience or the connections to pull off this project, except for me.
Commissioner Rubio.
So I tend to agree with Keith's perspective on this. I think I'm very excited about Albina Vision Trust's work on this. Very excited that the city is a partner. When I am mayor, I would want to do more to solidify that partnership. I do believe that, the caps are the most essential part because it's reconnecting community and rebuilding community. I'm also open to any ideas. I don't have deep knowledge on transportation like my colleague here, but I'm open to the idea of recalibration and right-siding the rest of the project, as long as the caps are the focal point, because that is about connecting and rebuilding community.
Thank you.
Yes, I would echo all of those things. The cap is the critically important part. I was excited to read this week that the expansion of the freeway was tanked. I don't think we need larger freeways. We need to learn to drive less. We need to learn to use public transit. We need to learn to exist in our communities and make those vital. And Renee Gonzalez, who sadly can't be here tonight, but he insists on his staff being downtown. I say that's environmentally unconscionable. If you can work at home, work from home so that we don't have more people on these highways, and let's cap it to heal the Albina neighborhood, to really make some more low income housing and have that area reconnected and thrum with activity. It's a win-win. So yes, I would.
I'm gonna have you keep the mic. I'm gonna start with you with this next submitted question. What process will you use for hiring the city administrator, as we touched on earlier? And would you involve the public in that process?
Of course I would, because the city administrator has to be approved by the city council. So the city council represents all of you in your districts. So absolutely, I would have to find somebody who you would approve of. It's funny, the Albina Vision Trust, I did a TED Talk a few years ago, and so did Rukaya Adams. I actually asked her, I was like, would you consider this job? She would not. But that was a stretch goal. But yes, the people are first. You are the people who hire the city administrator. The mayor is just the person who is brokering that agreement for you through the city council.
So yeah, I'm absolutely open to that. I really believe in hearing where the community is on certain issues. I don't know yet what way or what that would look like, but definitely the idea of that kind of perspective is really important to me.
Yes, we're going down the line now.
When I hire a city administrator, we're gonna do a national search. I'll tell you, Portland is the 26th largest city in the United States, which means that we could compete for the best talent in this space in the nation. I will also remind you, being a city administrator is literally a trained skill. You go to school to get advanced degrees to become a city administrator. That's going to be a top priority for me. Also going to hire someone who holds my core values, which include environmental protection, equity, becoming efficient, and being responsive. As we go through that search process, we will have community engagement. We'll literally have meetings like this. We'll bring together some of the top candidates, or maybe the individual candidates. We can figure out the specific details, and we can have dialogues like this. And not only will we meet with the folks in the room and the public, but we'll also meet with staff. We'll also meet with our intergovernmental partners. And we'll do our level best to hire the best talent in the nation, and we can attract that to the city of Roses.
Yeah, this is a really important question. So I've always built decisions around nothing about us without us. So whenever I am making a decision, I'm always involving the people that are going to be affected by that decision. In this case, the city administrator is one of the most critical roles that Portland has. So to have a citizen advisory committee is going to be paramount to not only the search, but also making sure what are the expectations. Portland has a whole new structure. We need somebody from a like-sized city or larger who has a record of success that we can verify, and then make sure they're the right fit for Portland. Bring them here, and in turn, we go to that city and we see the progress that they've made. Is it a high-performing city? And making sure that those values of that city match our city. And we do that through that community advisory group. We do that through experienced people that are Portlanders reviewing how will that person fit into our culture. So the answer is absolute yes.
I'm hearing resounding yes on public involvement. Mining is the most critical. Good news. We'll start down here again, work our way back down. I love the system. Next question from our audience. What will you do to phase out dangerous gas appliances in Portland? What will you do to phase out dangerous gas appliances in Portland?
We've heard so much about methane in the home. We've heard so much about the risks. So when you think about it, we have to focus on mitigating climate, but also the risks in the home. And we hear that through natural gas. So as Portland goes, we have to review other cities like Oakland who have banned natural gas as far as in new appliances going forward. I think we need to look at that as we're starting to see the harms in our community with natural gas in the home. I think it's time we take a hard look and we determine whether or not Portland is going to be that city that moves forward to really be focused on climate and emissions reduction, which means addressing appliances, moving from gas to electric.
Thank you. Mr. Mingus.
Absolutely. You know, our goal here is to get off of fossil fuels in the next 25 years. This is a step that we need to take. You know, I know an awful lot about how we take our transportation system and make it green. We need to do that same work in the housing space. I'll be transparent with you. In this space, I think Commissioner Rubio probably knows a heck of a lot more. That's kind of in her portfolio. I know that her shop has been doing some work here, so I'll continue to build on the work done by the Housing Bureau and Planning and Sustainability to get us off of using natural gas in our homes. We've got about a 25-year horizon to get there. I suspect that we can move much more quickly than that, though. Certainly that'll be my goal.
Thank you, Commissioner Rubio.
Yeah, I totally agree with everything that's been said by my two colleagues. And I will add that we do have a project and it's called Build Shift. And maybe some of you have heard this, and that is currently underway. And our staff is doing the good work in partnership with community, which this originated from community, to create that registry of housing so that renters can know exactly what they're getting. And then also we can move into the second phase, which is a phase out for any new builds. And I just am really hopeful and confident that, you know, in working with or having, you know, doing all these forums with our potential new city council members, I feel like there is a strong ethic in there to get this done. And I'm very excited about that. I know that we will probably see some really good progress in the next year.
Thank you. Good question.
Off the microphone. I will again echo what my colleagues have said here. I think another critical component of this is awareness. So I am a low income single mom. I have a 9-year-old daughter, and this wasn't even really on my radar until a few years ago. And we have all gas appliances, and so now I open a window and think every day, how can I afford to replace this stove? When will I have an extra $500, $700? So how about some tax incentives, maybe some rebates, but and definitely look into models like what happened in Oakland, where they banned natural gas appliances. That's huge. And so, like Carmen said, we have a city council coming on that will no doubt be more progressive, more representative of Portlanders and low-income Portlanders. And so to just bolster their ability to replace their appliances and have the awareness that it is dangerous.
Thank you. Alrighty. We have come to our final question for the evening. Thank you all for your submissions. This one also comes from our audience. And I will start with Ms. Osthus again. What are 3 specific, measurable, achievable actions that you will commit to doing as mayor? You've got a room full of cheerleader witnesses, and we're gonna give it 45 seconds. 45 seconds, please.
Number 1, I will center the river in all public dialogue, make sure that we celebrate it and honor it for the life-giving entity it is, and protect it and cherish it through every schooling, art forums, and CEI hub relocating removal. Number 2, thank you. Low-income housing, make sure that there's no income, low-income housing, because I do believe we're in a crisis of hopelessness, and that is a real critical driver of that people can't live in their communities. We keep getting pushed around and communities are split. Communities are powerful, honor that. And number 3, make sure that every person is recognized as the full human being that they are, with dignity and love and care for each other.
Thank you. Mr. Rubio.
So, it's hard to pick between so many competing ideas, but I will say that, the first one for me will definitely be to hold PSAP protected in this next budget. That is measurable and we can see it. We will make sure that it is funding only things that are within, the scope of its mission. The second thing is I would love to, explore sustainable housing prototype, in the upcoming, the next couple of years. And then the third thing would be to stand up and capacitate our chief sustainability office and our climate and sustainability commission and set it up to succeed.
Thank you.
Well, there's lots I want to accomplish, but let me focus in on the environmental space. And again, I'm going to sound a little bit like a broken record here, but it's an indicator of my focus. Our number one goal is to, achieve our equity goals in this climate space. In other words, to help vulnerable Portlanders survive our changing climate. I don't want to see anyone in Portland die of a heat stroke or freeze to death on our streets. And frankly, that needs to be achieved right away. Second, we got to achieve our carbon reduction goals. We got 25 years to get to zero, and frankly, basically by the end of my first term as mayor, I got to cut the amount of carbon emissions in this town in half. That's going to be a lot of work. And the third thing that I'm deeply committed to is standing up a new bureau in the city of Portland, which is responsible for managing our natural resources.
Alice, thank you. And Mr. Weston, take us out.
3 things in 45 minutes. First of all, thank you all for coming. This has been a great conversation and much appreciated. 3 things: drop the mic, walk off the stage. We're gonna electrify our city fleet. We're gonna show the way of other cities to do this. We're going to expand a network of charging stations, not only for private use and public use, but so a multifamily unit can actually move from a carbon-based car to an electric as well. And third and final is we're going to begin the funding for high-speed rail. So we're not just talking about the next 20 months, but we're talking about what are we going to do in 20 years. And when you have high-speed rail from Portland to Seattle, it has the potential of reducing 80% of all intercity trips. That's how we reduce carbon for the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Please let me know introducing everyone who are candidates who showed up today, showing their climate justice, resilience, sustainability, and our values of top priority. I will leave you with a few action items and some parting thoughts. Of course, number 1, ballots are out, so please send them back in, vote up and down that ballot. Regardless of the national elections, please use your voice in the state, county, city, and school elections. Number 2, engage, find your front line, find that nonprofit, find that candidate that is working towards a climate resilient future, and donate what time and skills you can. And last but not least, I tell you hope. I encourage each and every one of us to not see the climate resilience as an if, but a how and when. Imagine a world with climate stability, clean air, fresh water, equitable access to resources, abundant fauna, and protected, diverse, thriving wildlife. Next announcement. I do not think the measure of a civilization is how tall we build its buildings of concrete, but how well its people have learned to relate to their environment and fellow man. Woman or them too. Thank you for being here. Thank you to our sponsor 350. Thank you to the Melody. Of course, please stick around if you have any questions about transportation or Multnomah County relations. They have some answers for you. Otherwise, thank you again. Have a good rest of your night.
Oh my God. Oh my God, he gave me an hour like that.
Rail plan, jump before everyone starts to get